guys, welcome back to episode 3 of the College Predictor. Today we'll be going over week 3 college football predictions, game lines, shout-outs, and more. But first, let's talk about last week's performance. Overall, I had a much better record than week 1, finishing 17-12. And the headline for me was I had one perfect game where I predicted everything correctly. I said Oklahoma would win by 17 points against the SMU Mustangs, and they won 28-11, which, if you do the math, that equals 17. So, at the end, this is my first perfect game, and we're going to hope to keep them coming, keep good records on the way, and keep improving week by week with my analysis. So now, let's go to a couple of shout-outs, and it's very skill position themed today, with Georgia State, Notre Dame, and Miami, Ohio. So we'll start off with Georgia State. Georgia State's shout out for this week is Marcus Carroll. He's a running back, and he has a total of 191 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2 games. With his first game against Rhode Island, carrying the ball plenty of times to get 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this next game against UConn, he had 107 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. So he's having a great season so far. He's the 3rd leading rusher in college football right now. If he can keep it up, we'll see him in an all-pro and all-Sun Belt team. Our next shout-out is Audric Estan from Notre Dame, the running back. His game against NC State was incredible with 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. But the highlight was the first play back from that 5-hour rain delay. He had an 80-yard run that broke free. So that was a good play for him, and it kind of got Notre Dame back with energy after that rain delay. And our last one is Gage Lamadane from Miami, Ohio. In his most recent game against UMass, he put up Tyreek Hill video game numbers with 273 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns in 1 game. And you have to keep in mind that he's in the Mid-American Conference. He's not in the ACC. He's not in the Big Ten. So for a small school with not much talent, that's a very impressive feat. Now let's go to some games, and we're going to start off with our first game being between Mississippi State at home against LSU. This is a headline game because LSU has already lost 1 game to the Florida State Seminoles. And I'm telling you, they still have talent. Jaden Daniels has 615 yards and 6 touchdowns throughout the season. And he's only thrown 1 pick. But he has a lot of weapons to throw to, including Brian Thomas with 220 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Mason Taylor, who's been disappointing with an incredible rookie season last year, with 39 yards and no touchdowns in 2 games. Malik Neighbors with 154 yards and 1 touchdown. And he also has Kyron Lacey with 98 yards and 1 touchdown. So he's good at spreading the ball out, touchdown-wise and yard-wise. But they're going to need their defense to step up, which means they need Major Burns to have a very good game. Because Mississippi State, Will Rogers is going to show up. He has 5 touchdowns in the year so far. And Mississippi State's a very talented team, and they're at home. Unfortunately, this isn't a night game, though, so the Cowbells aren't going to ring as much as they should. So I think LSU as 9.5-point favorites is going to win this game, but they're only going to win by 4 points. Let's go to our next game, which is between the Army Black Knights on the road against UTSA Roadrunners. I'm going to say it once, I'm going to say it again. UTSA is a talented team. They have very good players, but it's going to come down to their quarterback. Can Frank Harris show up against a team that seems to be solid every year? But Army did just lose one of their key players to the draft, in Andre Carter. Well, I should more say military. He was undrafted. But so Army's defense is kind of all over the place. But Army has a very interesting offense because their quarterback is also their leading rusher. So they're going to be doing a lot of read options, speed options, quarterback draws. And I think UTSA is going to be ready for that. And their running game with Keontae Barnes is going to be a lot more strong than Army's. So I think UTSA, as 8.5-point favorites, are going to win this game by 14 points. Let's go to our next game, which is a rematch. If you could remember that game that went to, I believe, 9 overtimes between Illinois and Penn State's Nittany Lions. Penn State, they're currently a very talented team, number 7 in the nation, and their quarterback, Drew Aller, is on a roll. We saw what he did in his first game, and he's thrown 529 yards this season already and 5 touchdowns. So we know that he's a very capable quarterback, and he has good playmakers like Keandre Lambert-Smith, catching 2 of his 5 touchdowns. In Illinois, they just came off a loss to Kansas, which if you told anyone that 5 years ago, they would have called you mental. But now Illinois, they're a new team. The last time they were on, I told you guys that they've lost all of their key players, 3 of their DBs, their starting running back, and their starting quarterback. But Luke Altmaier, he hasn't looked good, but he hasn't looked horrible. Stats-wise, he has 408 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the key in this, 3 interceptions. You never want to be 50-50 on touchdowns to interception ratio. And he's going to be looking for Isaiah Williams a lot, his number 1 receiver. But Penn State, their DBs are too good. Kalen King's going to be all over Isaiah Williams. So I think Penn State, as 14.5-point favorites, will win this game by 20. I think it will not be close, unlike the last time these two teams played in Happy Valley. Let's go to our next game, which is between 2 weird teams, you could say that. The Louisville Cardinals against Indiana Hoosiers. Indiana, they've been competing. Like, they only lost to Ohio State 23-3, which, I mean, if you think about it, when you compare the talent levels of these teams, that's pretty impressive. And Louisville, they just lost Malik Cunningham, who's a very dual-thready quarterback to the New England Patriots through the draft. But Jack Plummer, I don't know what to think about him. He's looked good, he's looked bad at some points, but will he be good enough to take this Louisville team over a weekend Indiana team? He needs to get the interceptions down. In 2 games, he already has 3 picks, which is never where you want to be. So I think today is going to be a lot of a running game for them. They're going to hand it off to Joar Jordan plenty of times, since he already has 3 touchdowns on the year. And Indiana's Tavon Jackson, he hasn't thrown for a touchdown all year, but he hasn't thrown for an interception either. So Indiana's offense, not very good. They haven't really scored at all. So if they can't score, they can't win, because at the end of the day, whoever has the most points, they leave with a win in the left-hand column. So Louisville, as 10-point favorites, they're going to win this game by 14, 2 touchdowns. Let's go to a very, I think, overblown game by the game lines, which is number 1 ranked Georgia against South Carolina. And now I know South Carolina, they haven't got the start they wanted. They probably could have beaten their rivals, North Carolina, in the opening. And I think it's not going to be anything to do with Spencer Rattler for that loss, since he already has 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 698 yards in the season. So he's been playing good. He's been playing like Oklahoma, well, good Oklahoma version of himself. And he's going to be looking for Xavier Legette with 296 yards and a touchdown already this year. But he's going to have to try to deal with Malachi Starks guarding him. He already has a pick, 10 tackles, and is now the heart of the Georgia defense since they lost Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Christopher Smith, Keely Ringo, Jordan Davis, Trayvon Walker, all of those in the last 2 years. But I think Georgia at home with Carson Beck, the way he's been playing recently, I think they're going to be just fine. But the problem in I don't know about Georgia is they only have 1 sack all year. And when they're playing teams like Ball State and UT Tennessee Martin, 1 sack's pretty horrible for a team that's known for having incredible defenses. So Georgia, as 27.5 point favorites. They're going to win this game by 20. So it's not going to be as much of a blowout as they think it will be. Our next game is between the Minnesota Golden Gophers against the North Carolina Tar Heels. And we know North Carolina off to a hot start with the win against South Carolina and another scary win against Appalachian State. But then again, Minnesota, they're kind of that team in the Big Ten that seems to always be up there, always be competing to make the Big Ten championship. But they've lost a bunch of key players, their quarterback and their starting running back. But I think Darius Taylor, the original backup, has been doing a great job filling in Mohamed Ibrahim's spot with a touchdown and 196 yards. But Drake May's too much. The stats don't show it because he has 2 picks already compared to 2 touchdowns. But he's ultra talented, and he's going to lead this team to a victory today in Carolina, and as 8-point favorites. So we're going to win this game by 7, so it's going to be close to the game line. Let's go to our next game, which is between a school that's kind of always known in the Mountain West. I think it's a team with a quarterback controversy, not by who starts and who doesn't, but by what he did as a Tiger originally. DJ Ugalele, from the quarterback for the Oregon State Beavers, has played incredible, although he's only played one of their 2 games. In the one game, he threw for 346 yards, 5 touchdowns, no biggie, just led them to a blowout win against San Jose State. But their running back is also very talented, and Damian Martinez with 249 yards and a touchdown already. But then again, I think San Diego State's going to end up challenging them, but not so much because they're 24-point underdogs. So I don't think they're going to come in with any expectations or any pressure. So they're just going to go out and have fun against the number 16 team in the nation. But if you're playing at Oregon State, you can have fun, but you better be good while you do it because Oregon State's a good team, and they're going to win this game as 24.5-point favorites by 21. Let's go to our next game, which is kind of a headline game. I can't tell because one team's incredible, Washington, and the other team's okay in Michigan State. But my concern for Washington is they need to get their number 1 defensive end, Braylon Trice, going. He's expected to be a top 20 pick next year, and he's yet to record a sack against subpar teams. But their quarterback, Michael Penix, he's the leading quarterback right now with 859 yards, 8 touchdowns to only 1 pick. And I think a lot of that has to go to Rome Osadunes, who has more than a quarter of his yards with 239 and 2 touchdowns. So he's kind of the target for Michael Penix. But for Michigan State, they have a quiet quarterback that's been playing really good. His name, Noah Kim, 571 yards, 5 touchdowns to no picks. Very solid for a unknown type quarterback. I think Michigan State against this team, they're going to have more of a run game with Nathan Carter, since he already has 4 touchdowns. And Michael Penix, he's going to be fine. The DBs for Michigan State aren't the strongest, but if he throws to the middle, he has to watch out for Cal Holiday. He already has a pick and 15 tackles and is expected to be a first-team All-Big Ten. But I think this game, since it's in Michigan State, it's going to be loud, but it's not necessarily a night game. It's 2 o'clock Western time, so it's going to be, I believe, only 4 o'clock over there. In Washington, as 10-point favorites, they're going to win this game by, I'm going to say 15. They're going to win this game by 15. Let's go to our next game, which is it's not old rivalry, but it's been a quiet one recently. The Tennessee Volunteers and the Florida Gators. Now, Florida, they lost their quarterback in Anthony Richardson. However, their new quarterback in Graham Mertz has been playing solid, although he has negative 21 rushing yards, which is never a good thing when you went from Anthony Richardson, who's the most athletic freak we've ever seen in college for a quarterback. But Graham Mertz, he's a passer. He has 526 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. And Tennessee, they lost Hendon Hooker and their 2 best wide receivers in Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. But Joe Milton's fine. We saw what he did against Clemson in the Orange Bowl a year ago. And he already has 4 touchdowns this year with no picks. But their running back duo is going to be the thing to watch in this game. They have Jalen Wright and Jabari Small both having plus 150 yards. However, neither of them have touchdowns. So that's going to be a problem because they are both elusive backs. They're not power backs. They're not meant to score touchdowns. So in this old rivalry game with plenty of history, Tennessee has 6.5-point favorites. It's going to win this game by 3 in the Swamp. Let's go to our next game, which is between the South Alabama Jaguars and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. South Alabama has kind of been one of the 3 teams to beat in the Sun Belt, as well as Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State, because they're always a solid team. Like, they seem to always make bowl games. They seem to always compete against these Power 5 teams. Like last year, they only lost to UCLA by a last-second field goal. And UCLA, that team, very talented last year. They're going to rely on their run game a lot with LaDamian Webb. He's an ultra-talented running back, very likely to become a first-team Sun Belt. Although the stats don't show it as much as you would think. He only has 121 yards and 2 touchdowns this game. And Oklahoma State's going to have a quarterback controversy. They already played 3 this year in Gunnar Gundy, Garrett Rangel, and Alan Berman. I think they're going to go with Gunnar Gundy in this game, as if he has the least amount of interceptions and the second most amount of touchdowns. I mean, they could go either way. They're probably going to throw in different quarterback. But I think that could affect Oklahoma State in the end. So I think even though South Alabama is 7-point underdogs, they're going to win this game by a field goal in the last second. So our next game is between a new Big 12 team and the BYU Cougars and a team that I like a lot, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas still has KJ Jefferson, who's 5 touchdowns, no picks this year. Although, I feel like I'm disappointed in Raheem Sanders, as he only has 42 yards and 2 touchdowns this year. So, as of now, it looks like they're using him as like an Ezekiel Elliott type goal line back. And BYU, they've lost a bunch of their players as well. They lost their quarterback, Jaron Hall, and their number 1 receiver, Pua Nakua, some Hawaiian dude who's really talented. So BYU, they have new quarterbacks, new wide receivers, or should I say a tight end that's taking their team by storm. Isaiah Rex leads the team in receiving yards in 127 and has a touchdown this year. And their new quarterback, Kidron Slavis, has 4 touchdowns to 1 pick and 493 yards. And their number 1 DB, Jacob Robinson, has 2 picks this year. So he's going to have to try to keep KJ Jefferson low on the stat sheet. Because Arkansas, they have a hot offense. We know that. So I think in this game, Arkansas has 8-point favorites. They're going to win this game by a solid 4 points. Let's go to our next game, which is a rivalry that last year hadn't been played in forever, but this year it's coming back to back with the Pitt Panthers and the West Virginia Mountaineers, the backyard brawl. Pittsburgh, they've struggled in quarterback situations ever since Kenny Pickett left 2 years ago. So Phil Djokovic has to step it up against West Virginia. He's looked pretty clean so far with no picks, 4 touchdowns, and 393 yards. And you'll be looking for Daniel Carter with 90 yards and 1 touchdown. But I think if you look stat-wise, if you look talent-wise, West Virginia's a better team. Their quarterback, Garrett Green, has 402 yards, 4 touchdowns. Very similar to the Pitt quarterback. But their running back is far more superior. CJ Donaldson Jr. with 137 yards and 1 touchdown. So I think even though Pittsburgh, they're a talented team, they're known to beat average Big 12, Big 10 teams like this, they're going to have a hard time covering the wide receivers of West Virginia. And I think Hudson Clement's going to be open a lot this game, as he already has 3 touchdowns. So I think West Virginia in this game as 1-point favorite, they're going to win this game by 10 points. I think it's not going to be as close as they think. West Virginia, way over. So TCU, we know what happened against Colorado. That shocked everyone, including myself. And they have to play a new Big 12 foe in the Houston Cougars. TCU, like I said previously, they lost Max Duggan, so they have Chandler Morris, who's been average. He has a good yards, 542, but 2 interceptions. He has to cut that down if he wants to beat a team like Houston, who's hungry as they just joined the Big 12. Houston's Donovan Smith has very clean stats besides that 1 pick, and he's going to be looking for Samuel Brown, who already has 244 yards, but was in the shadow of Nathaniel #Tank Dell last year, so he wasn't really seen, and this year he's going to break out. But I think TCU, the replacements for NFL players are doing amazing. The running back, Amani Bailey, replacing Kendre Miller, who went to the Saints in the 3rd round, has 231 yards, but he needs to get the touchdowns up if TCU wants to use that run game. So I think TCU, they're going to want to win this game to prove that they're still the OGs in the Big 12. So as 7-point favorites, I don't think they're going to do it. I think Houston's going to actually shock the world and win this game by 4 points. And finally, we go to our last game, which is the nightcap, 10:30 Eastern Time, between Fresno State and Arizona State. Fresno State, I'm kind of shocked about how good their quarterback's been playing. Mikey Keene, 599 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And that's big ask, filling Jake Hayner, who had an incredible college career and is a backup for the Saints going into the next NFL season. But at Arizona State, they're a bigger team. We know them more. They're at home, but it's going to be a later game, so the heat's not going to be too much of a trouble for Fresno. But I do think it's going to come down to how the DBs of Arizona State play. Because Mikey Keene has 2 picks, but in 2 games, Arizona State has not recorded 1 interception all year. So their DBs aren't that strong. And Eric Brooks already has 3 touchdowns. So if they let Eric Brooks get another 3 touchdowns, but don't get any more picks, we know it's going to go Fresno State's way, which is exactly what I think is going to happen. Fresno State, 3-point favorites on the road. They are going to win this game by exactly 9 points. It's going to be field goals, 2-point conversions. It's going to be weird scoring. So that's all the games, but I want to go over, out of these games, the best ones that you want to watch. By watching on TV, in person, these are the ones you want to watch. First is LSU at Mississippi State. We want to see LSU because one more loss, they're out of the playoff conversation. And they cannot afford to slip a game like this when they still have to play Alabama later in the year. This game is on ESPN at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So make sure to record that one. Try to keep an eye on that game, because this game, they could be better than people think. Another game to keep out for is another SEC between Tennessee and Florida. We know it's a rivalry game. It's in the swamp. So in person, through the television, it's going to be a great atmosphere. This game's on ESPN, 4 o'clock Pacific time. So it's going to be a night game over there in the swamp. And the last game that you guys want to keep an eye out is none other than Pitt, West Virginia. This game, ABC, 4:30 Pacific time. This game could come down to the wire, so at least remember to try to put it on the 4th quarter. And the potential upset winner out of all of these teams is going to be Michigan State. because they could potentially upset Washington at home. And I kind of hope they do because field rushes are always fun. But we'll see until that game comes because that game is at 2 o'clock Pacific time. But I don't know how you guys are going to watch it because it's on Peacock. When do they start? I don't know why they have games on Peacock. But if you have Peacock, watch this game. And thank you guys for watching this video, episode 3 of the College Predictor. Make sure to like, subscribe that button, and comment what's your favorite college and what games you guys think will be better and want me to pick next week. So until then, have fun watching college football. See you later.